You're fine.
All right, just in case everybody has everything, right? Just, I guess we'll,
Yeah, it's a separate handout.
is there a way you could do it backwards? Because we need elevation, do you
Yeah,
want,
the
I guess it's it all
elevations
just
on the front
elevations
end.
now?
Yeah.
Okay, we kind of skipped everything
Oh,
else.
you want to, we can do that. We can come to the elevations
Yeah,
last.
to give Gregorio time to come in, yeah. If you
Okay.
could kind of change your
Okay,
agenda.
no problem.
So that way,
We can
just
do
the
that.
the elevations, I do want at least a consensus of the majority of the board. They
Yeah,
say, okay.
sure.
Yeah, or nay. So I had to throw you off a little bit. It's not your fault, you
No,
know.
we're good.
But see, we're resilient, and now we teach our students to be resilient, right?
We're working
So-
backwards, it's not.
I really like that page.
Perseverance, resilience.
We can flip
I
around.
think it
Right.
gives us a true vision, you know?
Okay, so, all right, but Mr. Bass and I are ready to rock.
Okay.
So we're going to call this workshop to order. It's about 4:03. We're waiting for another person to come to have established quorum and to be able to identify and give you direction on the elevations. So with that, Mr. Clinch, if you can rearrange the agenda and
Yes, sir.
make the elevations last, and that way give them time to come in.
Absolutely. Thank you,
we are.
Mr.
Oh,
Vice
never
Chairman.
mind.
And members of the
joined.
board. Okay, we're
So
good.
shall we just go from beginning?
Okay, just go from beginning to end.
Okay, great.
We have a
Good-
quorum.
Good afternoon. This is our facilities workshop for July, and we have a total of 7 items that we want to cover with you. At first, thank you so much for taking time a couple of weeks ago to meet with Mr. Sharman and myself to run through the workshop for today. And we, from that, we were able to gather your input, and we have incorporated that into today's presentation. Unfortunately, the workshop item was already posted to board docs, so we have a separate item in your package called additional renderings. So there are a total of 7 items today. The first 2 are those that we're looking for guidance on. The remaining items are informational. So with that, we're going to start with the elevations, building elevations for K8BB Knightsbridge. And Dave, I'll let you take us through the options.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I want to recognize we have our two design firms in the audience today. And if you could show who you are by a wave. From Ziskovich Architects, we have Mr. Ed Napier. And from Schenkel Schultz, we have David Torwart, Joe Toth, Alex Strawn, and Valerie Villarago.
And we also have a law representative.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see him. And we also have Mr. Philip Donovan with Little Architects. Thank you all for being here today. So we'll move into the elevations for Knightsbridge K8.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Clinch. So I know we reviewed this with you previously, just to give you a heads up. And so the inserts that you have are sort of were an attempt to capture some of your comments. So I'll go through what we have. So we have 2 options for K8BB, the Knightsbridge site, and we have 2 options for Sunbridge as well. So the first, on slide 4, you'll see what the front entrance could potentially look like. And then slide 5 gives you a wider view from the parking lot. In this attempt, and we did get back some comments from the use of the briquettes along the outside of the school. As we discussed, this has a bit more of a price point, but it's a lot more maintenance friendly in the long run. And
And
then,
add a little bit less painting. There'll still be painting required for the building, but then the areas that have the briquettes obviously won't have to be painted.
and
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So slide 6 is gives you sort of a wider view of what this could look like. And again, we did get comments from you prior, so we might have sort of a hybrid approach, so that it's a little bit complicated, I apologize. This shows sort of a wider view of what it could look like, and like Mr. Clinch mentioned, it's an attempt to use a lot of daylighting because of the windows. Oh, I'm sorry. There's an attempt to use a lot more daylighting with the windows, especially along the top story. Is there anything else?
So what we heard from your input is lots of glazing, concerns for solar heat gain coefficient, and also with the brick, a very institutional look. So we were looking to get something that was a little bit friendlier. And also keep in mind that this school will have the business focus. So we were looking to do something in those elevations that incorporated that theme as well. And so good segue to talk about the second elevation.
So our second elevation takes more of a modern look, and this uses more primarily the tilt panel, using that in the design. It doesn't have any of the brickwork. Obviously, a lot of this is representative, so the paint colors obviously will change once we've decided what our theme is and stuff like that. We did hear your comments about the school name potentially, and letter sizing and stuff like that. And so we've attempted in one of our revised options to take that into account, get more of a hybrid approach in between the two. And then on slide 9, you have that wider view that shows the end elevation, where our intent was to replace the artwork there with something with a business focus, like Mr. Lynch mentioned, that would sort of be, for lack of a better term, sort of a marketing tool for the school. Did you want to go through that?
Yeah, sure. So now let's flip to the separate handout included in the back of your package, titled Additional Renderings. And so we've been working with the designer to generate what Mr. Sharma mentioned as the hybrid.
Right, so you have a different approach here where they sort of married the two a little bit. It should have been a little clip on in the back. It doesn't have a page number. It was just an attempt to show you that we did try to do some work between when we met with you to now. So this takes more of that modern approach that we were asked for, or at least an attempt to do that. Getting that business focus, and also like adjusting the letters to make sure that the sizing was right. The next slide, you'll find more of a front-on view.
I know. Do we have this here?
No, we do not.
Okay.
No,
We couldn't
it's a
post it
handout only.
because it came in late on Monday.
So
That's fine.
you'll note that we have reduced the glazing. The glazing has been stepped back a little bit, but still adequate to provide a good amount of natural day lighting into all our classrooms. We still have the color palette with reveals, and we've kept that end elevation branding item focus.
We did hear the comments about, trees around the playground to provide some natural shading, so there's an attempt to show how that could potentially look.
Good man. Good man.
To change the end elevation to have sort of more of a business focus, to make sure that we can use whatever artwork we ended up putting there would bring that out. So it's an attempt to really answer a lot of your questions, and we think that it has that more of a modern look, business focus. So I mean, we brought the teams in because we wanted to hear your comments, and so if there are any adjustments that we needed to make, again, I'm happy to do that.
Well, two things, just not the whole thing, but just small little details, and then let the board say the rest if they need to. At the very entrance, that little roof or the canopy or whatever you want to call that, I always like to extend it out as much as possible, because a lot of times people wait there after school, and if it's raining, it can provide a little bit more cover, because later on, we might have to put gutters on there when water falls on it, So maybe we should put gutters on it now, before we have to redo it. And also just sunshade. So however far the engineering can allow you to come forward on that lip, to come out as far as possible, because it does get hot in here, and it does rain, and people have to wait sometimes for their parents or whatever to pick them up.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with playgrounds. I think that should be natural. Every time we build a new playground, K-8, they should have canopies. So they should have the design to have some kind of coverage on top of them. I think we talked about that before.
So
We're trying to retrofit the other ones. I don't want to keep creating a bigger backlog.
It's actually our standard, and again, it's just an attempt at a rendering, but our design guidelines requires a shade structure for the.
Yeah. So just because I see that.
I love the adjustments. Yeah,
Right.
I think that it does look modern. It resolves some of the maybe less business-like aspects of some of the other renderings. I think they're great.
And again, the colors are representative, so we can always change them to the theme of the school once we get to that point.
And also, there was another comment, but I think it was more so for the Sunbridge regarding benches in the front.
Yes.
But with both Knightsbridge and Sunbridge, we will incorporate benches for the car pickup line. to help expedite
It's
that.
usually something we handle through our FF&E, but we will certainly show them on the drawings as we develop those plans.
And we don't have to have one at every single station, but maybe every other, at least 2 or 3.
Understood.
It's really helpful with your littlest learners, your BBK kiddos, your kindergarten kiddos, and your potentially exceptional student education kids.
Okay, so we are going to proceed with the hybrid, the alternative option. And now moving to our next elevations for CC Sunbridge.
So what you're looking at is the elevations that were presented, and we did get comments, so similarly, we'll go back with some,
Are we still in the, are we just going
the
to?
original packet,
Right.
Mr.
Back to the original package.
Slide number 10. So for Sunbridge, we do have 2 options. Similarly, we showed three different views of it to potentially what it could look like. This does use a lot of the tilt panel with the reveals to bring out the architect's vision for this. But you do have a central point closer to the entrance, which is the main stairwell, where you have a lot of the glazing that goes all the way up. And we ensure that area is going to be conditioned in there. We'll ensure that it's conditioned, that it's easy to maintain as it goes. So it does allow a lot of daylighting into that stairwell. It's the main stairwell. We did get a comment about the height of the front canopy, and in the adjusted rendering, we did ask the architect to lower that, so it will be lowered to the first floor to avoid the rain flashing in, and similar comments to the first one will be taken into account in gutters and stuff like that. So the 2 options that we have are on slides 10, 11, and 12, and that's one approach that the architect used to get it done. And then slides 13, 14 has the second option, where they use different colors and different reveals to break it up a little bit more.
So what we heard in our separate meetings with the board members is that the preference was the beige earth tone colors, and that would be the first option shown. However, there was concerns with the higher entry feature, as Mr. Sharma mentioned, with the wind turbine rain. So going to our additional elevations, Ziskovich has provided some options for it. We continue to have all those previous color schemes, but have lowered that front entry feature.
And can we do the same thing too, where it stops at the column? Can the front come out a little bit more too? Like here it says Osceola County Schools, right?
To extend that out.
The end of it stops at the thing. I'm not an engineer, but I'm pretty sure it can go a little bit further without affecting it, just to provide extra cover.
I love the integrated flagpole in this building.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and it does, it gives you that visual. I don't know how a fan I am of like behind the lettering, you see like they're individually ribbed versus a solid surface. Does that take away from the logo when we put a logo, or,
No,
you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
No,
it's
we-
like individually ribbed, it's like individual
Sure.
pieces versus a solid piece.
so the preference would be to have a solid background
I mean, I don't know, I'm just kind of
with
talking about
a
it.
different color in the lettering, for the lettering to stand out more. Certainly, we can do that.
Is the maintenance
And we
a
can
little
do
bit-
pin letters.
Is the maintenance a little bit less on something that's non-ribbed? You know, because I know
believe
we-
it would
Potentially
be.
would be.
dirt dauber, mud daubers and all of
Yeah,
that, you know.
right.
get
Because
all that in
birds
there.
can, yeah. and they stand on each
Absolutely,
one of
yes,
them.
yeah. That would be a more maintenance-friendly approach as well.
It might be-
And also, the benefit of lowering that front entry feature is now we get natural daylighting into those 2 additional windows. Previously, those windows were going to be under the covered area.
That's a really stupid question. When they do the renderings, I assume they know the position of the building and the relationship of the sun, don't they? When they give us the renderings, where
Yes.
the shades are going to be, because, you know, the south side of the building is going to be a little different than the north side and vice versa.
Yeah, they do energy modeling based on that, because we have an EUI goal that has to be achieved. So that's all part of the energy modeling to ensure that we're going to achieve our objectives for our high-performance building criteria.
Right, and to tag on to that, Mr. Bass, when we say daylighting, is we try to use as much natural light into the buildings during the day when the students are there, so that we can reduce the amount of actual energy we're using from artificial light. And so that ties into us using lower energy overall. So it takes into account, a lot of times we take into account how we position the building to maximize.
Oh, absolutely. 'Cause you know what,
sunlight into the building.
praising, I talk to homeowners all the time, and people who have porches that are east-west, facing west, they hate them a whole lot than the ones that are north-south, because.
Right, 'cause you can't use it-
south,
you can't use it in the morning or the
You can't sit out there,
afternoon.
because the sun is bearing down on you all the time, whereas it's on the south side, you're always in the shade.
I'm one of
Right.
those.
You're one of
And
those.
in fact, that is the case with these elevations. We have minimized the glazing on the east and west elevations and have been very careful how we did that on the south elevation.
Gotcha.
I'd say that heat gain coefficient goes up. if you open
But
those
we've
up.
done it in a way that we want that natural daylighting to go deep into the structure. And, you know, Harvard study, have been completed, you know, confirming all the great benefits from natural daylighting, improved test scores, improved circadian rhythm. There's lots of great benefits from the natural daylight. Not to mention that it helps to lower our energy consumption.
And you put the deciduous trees on certain sides of the building, I mean, probably not as much in Florida as you would have in the north, where you know, we want it a little bit warmer in the wintertime, but a bit cooler in the summer.
Yes.
So,
So what we're hearing is the first elevation with the hybrid, lowering the covered entry feature, extending that entry feature out, and the integrated flagpole.
And the ribs, no ribs.
And the no
ribs.
ribs, no
Yeah,
ribs.
no ribs. And if
So
you-
we're going with this one, right? Is this the profile or is it this profile?
It would be the handout, so it
Yeah,
would be
that's the
this.
same one. And we'll make the change.
Yeah, the only thing is, and I'm just like saying it for now, forever hold my peace, I'm not really sold on it, that I don't have to have it. Like, what if the school wants to put, like, in Gateway, we have like a panther, you know, they want to put something like that. Is there space for them to do that?
So what we
Or they would
typically-
just use a glass window, use like a mosaic with a banner hanging down or something?
What we typically do is incorporate the mascot into the gymnasium floor.
There is an option to put in the benches in front. You can, there are options where there is the marquee branding that you do as well. Typically, we don't find K or elementary school that goes that size, but
Okay. All right, gotcha. We're good.
And this school will have the eastbound focus, just like New Creek K, which was very popular, very successful.
all right.
Okay.
Well, that brings us to our informational items.
Slide number 16.
So first, we have our test fit for AAA, which is our next high school on the Nova Newman site.
So this site is pretty big for us because we're currently designing the transportation facility that is going to be on the south side, the south end of that facility. So there is a road that's shown there, but and hatched out. When we're going to come to that transportation facility is an item that we discussed previously regarding this road. Ideally, what we're showing is we do have the high school prototype, which is very close to Toho, Harmony, Celebration High School,
Liberty.
Liberty High School. We've built this quite a few times. It's a Schenkel-Schultz prototype that we've used. And essentially what we show is that we can fit our program requirements on the site, on what we have here. And the next page, slide 17, shows you a more blown-up view. It is just really to show us that we can make this site work, and from a traffic standpoint, parking standpoint, all our program, football, practice fields, baseball, softball, and everything. We did get some comments on this as well regarding, the placement of our retention ponds and stuff like that.
I'm telling you, if this is a template, because at Harmony, we've had issue upon issue with that retention pond being that close to the backstop of the baseball and the softball fields.
And I assure you, Mr. Bass, the architect has that comment already.
Okay, good.
And the other thing, well, I need to get some direction to Dr. Pace, because I had spoken to you about it. From what I understand, is the city wants to use this as an access road to get into their community.
Yes, sir.
And the
We
reality
actually
is.
have that as a separate item. That's
Oh,
our
okay,
last
okay.
item.
It's coming
All
back.
right, I jumped the gun.
We're going to come
No,
to the
it's
slide.
okay.
I'll wait till that turn.
It's
Sorry.
good to get to it. And then slide 18, which is the most important one, is what we think how much we think we'll need to build this facility. Again, as we discussed, is we took the current numbers that we're getting from Gateway and Cedarbridge and Island, the elementary school that are currently in construction, and we've escalated it based on what we've seen over the past few years out to when the school is going to land in 2026.
So we are currently working with the designer to negotiate the design fee based on the 2026 opening. We have to get going now based on the 22-month for construction, 14-month for design.
Our expectation is that we should potentially have that to you at the next board meeting.
It's a lot of ink on that paper.
There is a lot of ink on that paper, sir.
Can I talk about one thing now, or?
Yes, sir. Oh, you still want
The street?
the road?
Yes.
It's
Well, let
actually
me talk
a
about
separate
something else
item.
real quick.
Yeah, it's
On
our
these-
last
on
item.
all these designs, we're seeing the outside facade, right? But obviously, we're trying to secure lobbies. I'm not looking at the inside rendering. I just want to make sure that no matter which facade we use, that they're coming into like a secure lobby.
Yes, single
That there's
point of
no way for
entry
them to get
during the
out
school day.
or with some kind of,
High concentration for our gate openings, so that when the school day starts, all those exterior gates close. And as the school day starts, everything has to come in through the secure lobby. It is a Sally Port design, such that visitors have to be vetted before they're allowed into the lobby. And once they're in the lobby, then the second containment occurs, where if there's an incident in the lobby, then those guests are contained to the lobby before they're allowed to go out into the school proper.
And if I can add to that, Mr. Melendez, when we start designing this, our 30%, we sit with the assistant superintendents, we sit with safety and security, we sit with maintenance, and we go through the floor plan, make sure we're programming this out. The assistant superintendents typically get into if they're having a science classroom, a technology classroom, and then safety and security will go into secure lobby, glazing, that sort of stuff. So we take all of those stakeholder comments, and we are obligated to design these to meet the Stoneman Douglas Act, to meet SREF requirements and all of those. So essentially, yes, you will have a secure lobby. We will use the building themselves as much as we can to keep the students locked in behind and get that 280 degrees that we asked for. So even though we keep that open front entrance, that way that it looks like we can get into the parking lot, ideally you shouldn't be able to access the kids behind. And that's standard we put those in as we get those, we update our design guidelines and we make sure that every new iteration gets corrected. A lot of times, if we get one of those directives from the state that comes whilst we're in construction, we issue change orders to make sure that they're picked up in that school.
right. Then the other item I just kind of want to bring up, and then the rest of it's pretty self-explanatory. We mentioned at the strategic plan at the end, to what degree is tilt wall really helping us? And we talked about it even outside the lobby, just for transparency, I want to talk about it here, because it has an issue with our communications and the DAS radios going in and out. So if you want to share, is tilt wall still the way to go? Are we looking at it in the design standards? Or is there, no matter what design standard you have, does it still have a flaw with communication?
Yeah, from a schedule and timeline standpoint, from a cost standpoint, and typically from a maintenance standpoint, tilt wall is still the superior product to use. However, we always look at other products. We look at masonry, curtain wall systems, SIP panels, to ensure that we're providing the best solution for that school. We like the tilt wall panels because typically we can get adequate resources to get those constructed in the time frame that we need so that we can keep the school project on schedule. Whereas, masonry, much more labor, very hard to get that additional labor to the job sites. From a durability standpoint, especially with the high-performance building criteria that we're incorporating, where we're ensuring that all those tilt panel joints are sealed very well over the life of the building versus what was the previous industry standard where there was one backer rod and one caulk joint. And in 2 to 3 years' time, that caulk joint was failing and that building was leaking and allowing moisture to get into that building. So we're taking a very methodic approach into how we get our buildings tight so that they will perform not only from a very good from an energy standpoint, but from a maintenance durability standpoint as well.
Mr. Clinch, have the architects considered carving granite blocks like the pyramids?
Well-
considered it.
It was the first thing that was value engineered out.
Well, Mr. Robert was explaining to us as well earlier that they've looked at it from multiple options and across the state, having to do similar analyses, Mr. Melendez, in terms of material types to build schools. There are certain times, Dave, you might do a better job at this than I can.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, over the years, we've been asked by a number of clients to kind of do that assessment of various building systems and materials to try and determine what's the best option. And almost invariably, when you consider cost efficiency, time efficiency, and durability/maintainability, the tilt wall option almost invariably comes to the top of that consideration. That's not to say that there aren't other materials and other systems that don't make sense under certain circumstances. But even with that, I think I was describing to Dave earlier that we're doing a four-story addition on a private school campus right now. It's done out of steel frame with curtain wall. It's the primary cladding system. We're still having to put DAS repeaters inside that building. Just because it's just the mass and it has to do with the antennas and the locations and all that. I mean, it kind of comes with the territory in just about any building these days.
And we had looked at a curtain wall system, for example, on City Academy, and we found that from an air leakage standpoint, it did not perform well. And we went to a tilt wall system with punched openings at Neo City Academy.
It is going to be an ongoing process, Mr. Melendez, and I think Mr. Glitch and I will commit to the board that we will constantly look at the best option to build our schools and to make sure that we're as fiscally responsible as possible.
But also taking into account the safety piece.
Yeah, so if the
DAS
FF&E,
radio piece is resolved during the course of construction, because they don't get a CO until we make sure that DAS radio system is
That is a
operational and
check.
effective.
It is a check step.
But also then, we will also work with Mr. Thorne and our IT team on what infrastructure needs to be in place to ensure that we have either the Wi-Fi service or the cell service. And in the event that something fails in terms of a push button, a telephone, a cell phone service, they also can always use the telephone in their room to alert an emergency system that will go out school-wide, will contact immediately our law enforcement teams, the safety and security team, me. So that is built into the roll-in phone
there's some
system.
redundancies in there.
Yes, there
There
are
are-
redundancies.
there are-
Fail-safe and all.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
And in fact, following our one-on-one, Mr. Sharma and I did follow up with Mr. Thorne. He could not be here today, but we did discuss the Wi-Fi and looking at expanding those capabilities as we move forward to ensure that we have good connectivity with cell phones going forward.
And not only that, but now we have one-to-one digital devices too, so it's a dual purpose. We need more repeaters or extenders because we got 10,000 students on internet.
And that's a part of our wiring. For example, the Spectrum contract is on the board agenda for tonight to renew for another year until we decide to go out for RFP or whatever for that service. But we're constantly looking to increase the capacity of our infrastructure through E-rate and also then the capital investments.
Are they all fiber now? Because since we're just going crazy now, right? Because the backbone to get to the school, it's got to be at least fiber or T1.
They are.
Yes,
It
correct.
is. And so what you find, Mr. Melendez, you see all these cabling projects that we're doing, like at Ponciana, and I think we're going to Kissimmee Middle next. As IT identify the schools with issues, we're going and we're actually replacing the backbone inside with the latest Cat6e cables to make sure that we do get the fastest speeds to the students and their laptops and to the phones if they go on the Wi-Fi. So we are upgrading those as well, as we do have fiber to every school.
Okay.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, wait, now can I ask the question on the street?
Actually,
We
have a slide- we have a
let's do it
slide
on our
specifically
last
for you,
item.
Mr.
Okay, I thought
We have
jumping
two
over.
more, three more test pits to run through. The next two are for our K-8s. The first one is Kindred.
So on the Kindred site, what you're looking at on slide 20 is what we typically do on a test fit. We have 3 prototype K-8 schools that we can use. We typically take those floor plans and then look at which works best in terms of, the traffic, the loading zones, how do we put those athletic facilities in a location that's safe, where the traffic comes off of a side road rather than main road, how much stacking we can put on site. And ultimately, what you're looking at on slide 20 is the test fit that we came up with, which is is going to be a replica of what's at the Knightsbridge site. This helps us because we're currently working through the design for this, so we have the floor plans that are worked out and stuff like that. So we're thinking that we can make really good progress on this school. This site is more narrow and longer, and so this prototype actually worked best compared to our other two, which are a little bit wider and takes up a little bit more of our real estate. And so we think that this works better. You know, we've attempted to stack as much of the parent traffic as we can on site. I don't have a number here yet, but again, the attempt of our test fit's not really, it might change slightly when we get into design, but what it does show is that programmatically we can fit what we need to on that site. Then our next slide is the budget that we potentially need for, to build K8AA, which is the Kindred. And again, it's a similar approach in terms of building our budget. We've used our estimates that we've gotten, that we're getting back from our contractors on current market conditions for our Knightsbridge and our Sunbridge sites. And so we're taking that and escalating to when these schools are going to be open in 2025.
What's your escalation for these?
I want to say it's like 4 or 5%, because it's been much steeper than normal since the pandemic started. So we've been carrying the pandemic escalation through, because really there is no end in sight, because we thought by the time we got to Gateway or Celebration Island, things would have started to normalize, but we haven't seen that. We're dealing with it still, plus we're dealing with the lead time issues now. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to come and ask you for more money. And now I'd be happy to turn over back some of this if things do normalize and we can build the school cheaper. Absolutely.
Now, this is more for Mr. Bass, this is a colleague, Chris. I lean on his expertise. I'm starting to see a pivot, because I'm a real estate broker. The interest rate just got hit really hard. So I'm going to start seeing a pivot on escalation of real estate costs itself, and he's probably seeing that as well, or will be. We can kind of see it coming. Is that happening also in the construction material costs? Because one thing is not exactly correlated to
In
the other.
some areas,
Do
but
we
in
see a
most
kind of
areas,
turning
we're
point?
still seeing the cost escalation driven by the supply chain challenges. It will take some time for those supply chain issues to level themselves out.
I think for us, in what we do, what you're seeing is that the critical pieces are what's affected. So HVAC, because it has so much computer chips and stuff like that related to them now, they're so sensitive. Roofing materials, the bad part for us is we really can't start putting in the flooring and painting the walls on the inside without the HVAC running and without that roof really built. And so that's where we're getting creative and having to figure out how we can get the building tight and do that. So there are some things, Mr. Melendez, that might be normalizing, but there are key aspects to what we build, like the HVAC and the roofing, that are still going to affect us in the long run.
I know the new construction has definitely shifted a little bit, because whereas the builders were not giving any commission to realtors because they didn't need to, now they're flooding everyone with, they're trying to recruit realtors to bring buyers to them. So, hopefully maybe that's the canary in the cave, I don't know, but
We're hoping so.
Let's hope that it just, I say hope, we don't want, it's going to, maybe on the new construction, if it slows down, maybe that supply chain will then
Right. Get caught up.
start seeing lumber, prices
We're
going
hoping
down.
so. Our contractor at Gateway is having to get creative with our renovation projects. Instead of having to keep our schedule, we're having to do at least one building where we're rebuilding the existing HVAC system. It's going to be an entirely new inside, but it's easier to order the kit parts and put it together than to order the entire new air handler and bring it in, because the lead time for that new one is so much longer. So we're constantly looking at doing things creatively to get our projects done on time.
Okay, we'll move to our next elevations, K8DD, Roan Bridge.
So the Roan Bridge site is off of Orange Avenue and 19th Street, and it's a little bit of a Z shape. And again, we went through the same process where we laid out all three of our K8 prototypes on the site, and this one worked best. This site is actually probably one of the better ones that we have in terms of how much space we have on it. So we can have a significant amount of stacking here. This prototype that you're looking at is going to be a replica of the Sunbridge school. We feel that we can really make this work well here, but there are many things that are going to happen, which is like the Orange Avenue Orange Avenue is going to need to be extended along there. There is going to be a huge utility easement on the backside of the school, not going to affect us, but a lot of this depends on these developers really building out their streets and their homes and their utilities, and we're constantly dealing with those. But we feel that this really works well.
I didn't realize it last time, and I apologize. It looks like on the south side, I don't know what's north-south on this, I'm just.
The north
south
side
side of
is
the
usually
page.
the top, north's usually
Yeah.
the top of the page.
That looks like, is that the bus loop there, right? That's
Yes,
not the
sir.
parent one?
Correct.
Now, when the buses have to come out into that side road, Orange Avenue, then they're always turning right there, or they're turning left? Do we have to build a light there? Because there might be a problem with the light and the intersection being so close to each other. Because that is a road, right? This
It
bottom
is,
thing
our
here?
Orange Avenue does extend. So, Mr. Melendez, when we get into this, it's hard to tell you yes or no at this point. We would, once we engage design, we do a traffic study, and based on that is where the recommendations come out on whether we're going to need a signal or whether we're doing a right turn only. And then we work with transportation to really come up with what is the best way for us to do this and do something safe. So,
Yeah, and part of our reviews with the municipalities, the site development planning and such, they look at those type of aspects. They will require a traffic impact analysis and will determine the extent of off-site right-of-way improvements that we have to complete.
we would have to submit this to St. Cloud and along with our traffic analysis, and then we would find something that works for both of us. It's usually a very scientific way of determining. Now, if we don't have a ton of houses to our west here, I think we should be fine, and we
No, I'm
wouldn't
just saying,
be.
because what if, I'm playing contingency here before,
Gotcha.
because like, I've seen a lot of times where it was too late to make a change, because if they come back, and, because that red thing is, this, let me just make sure, I'm referring to, this is a road, correct?
No,
No,
those are
that's the
utilities.
utility.
Utilities.
Okay, I wasn't confused, because I thought this was a road, and like, usually you can't turn left onto a, without a, you know what I'm saying?
No,
If you
that's-
ever had to
that's-
put a light, you can't put a light right next to a road.
That's a utility easement that we're obligated to show. So
For some
because
reason, it looked
passes
like a
through
highway
another
or road,
person.
okay, never mind, I take that back.
Yep.
I was under the impression that that drawing was a road.
That's gonna be power and water and sewer and stuff like that.
Okay, never mind.
Are they, I haven't looked at the master plan, are they taking Orange all the way down to Knowlton? You know of?
Is that the plan, Jason? I'm not sure, Mr. Hans.
Are you-
We can follow up, Mr. Bass. We'll get that information.
I think so.
Oh.
So our next slide, 24, is where we showed the budget, and we're showing a similar budget at this time because both of these sites are going to be pad ready. Both Kindred and Lonebridge are going to be pad ready. So where we aren't anticipating a lot of site work, and so we're thinking that cost per square foot for these schools should be very similar. So we're carrying a similar budget. We will have some escalation built into that.
And all these are about 20-acre sites, right? Each one of these more or
I
less?
think that's the minimum we can build a
That's
K
correct.
concert.
Okay.
So the last update really on a test fit is the Neo City Phase 2 project, which again, on the board agenda tonight for approval under facilities would be the design fee for this, but
So given that this Phase 2 needs to open in June of 2024, we need to get going immediately. So we're already planning our program verification meetings so that we can roll into production design. Design should be relatively straightforward because the first building, essentially with some minor tweaks, will serve as the prototype for the second building. The second building modifications will include a full 3-story versus the 2.5. And we're doing this so that we can pick up additional student stations and have the ability to get rid of the 4 portables that are currently on site. Another modification would include a small kitchen. And we would continue to use the mixer that we have in the existing building as the cafeteria space, multi-purpose space for that building. We're also looking at, rather than replicating the administrative suite that we currently have in the first building, we would disperse those offices, more so dean's offices on each floor of the second building.
those are all spaces that we're gonna pick up for classroom space.
So there'd be predominantly, maybe like one lab or something in there, right? Because you can have like all the labs in one building, but try to have more classroom
More
spaces.
classroom space.
Yeah, and more so traditional classroom spaces versus the high-tech, very expensive laboratories. We believe that's already been adequately covered in the first building.
I don't want to be like boring though, because I still like the, you know what I mean? With the part of the allure, like I said, they don't have to have a lab attached to it, but I kind of like the elevated stadium seating type deal. It makes you feel like you're in a college
We will
campus. you
incorporate
know?
those. Those are the breakout spaces.
Yeah. Are we-
24.
Are we using the same architect as
This is the
24?
definition of an aggressive schedule.
I was going to say, you think, is that a realistic number? Is that, I mean, not a.
These are the things that got me with the gray hair.
So,
They can do it, I
you know, we had a very aggressive schedule when we, you know, decided to move forward with the first phase.
It is,
So,
but I think
you
we're
know, we've
doable.
communicated that to Little. It is a aggressive schedule.
Good, 3 months.
We're not going to have any storms this year or next year.
Well, and, you know, we're hoping we can actually pick up time on the design, get this into construction sooner, so that we can hedge our bets with supply chain issues.
Well, there's minimum interruption to the campus, right? Because it's not like we're demolishing anything, right? Is there
That's our
enough
hope.
space for them to like
There
not have
is,
to interrupt the
however,
workflow?
Dr. Pace has already had conversations with the county, and we would be looking to the county to assist us with parking. Initially, for staff, but initially, we're going to be talking to the county about using the parcel adjacent for laydown, so we can have our trailer. You know, we would likely have to sever this right side of the site so that
Take away
we
the bus
can.
loop.
Right, we would essentially lose the bus loop for the one school year. However, we've already discussed it with Principal Meacham. We believe we can provide those same provisions along the main road, Neo City Way. Now that we have the new entry punched through at Denjon Lane, so that should work.
We will be building out the parking lot as a part of this project as well to maximize our parking, where our grass parking is, and the portables are expected to go away at the end of this project.
So what's different from what we initially envisioned? Initially, we thought that the second building would be a middle school component, but now it's going to be a high school component. And because high schoolers drive, we have to provide that parking for not only the students, but the staff.
Students are not able to park across the street without the crosswalk and the bridge
So it'd
and
be
all
just
kinds of
staff
stuff.
parking.
So it would be staff parking in the parking garage that they're building, that they would lease us.
So slide 27 is an attempt to show you what we, obviously with replicating the building, for lack of a better term, you know, we're trying to keep the same theme going across. So this is what the elevation would potentially look like. And then slide 28 is that very tight budget that we have. So we're looking to about $18.6 million for construction with this, you know, very high-performance building.
In comparison, the last time we opened Neo City Phase 1, the first project, that was a total project budget of 18. We were able to complete that for 17.1. So as compared to the 25.5 and the escalation that we've seen, this will be a very tight, aggressive budget.
And then, last item on our agenda is the Nova Road Transportation Facility. So this is the same site as the high school that we showed you earlier, but the south side is kind of what's darker now, that shows the transportation facility and how it's laid out. We've been in talks with the county as well as the city of St. Cloud regarding how our site was going to be laid out and access. So one of the key things that we can't do is have our high school traffic exit or enter directly off of Nova Road. So we needed to build a driveway onto our site for our buses. And so our intention was to put a traffic signal at the Nova Road entrance. That is a part of our program. Well, in those discussions, the county indicated that this needed to be made as a local road that connects the neighborhood that is going to be developed to your east here, your southeast, and connected to Nova Road as a pass-through, to allow traffic, public traffic to pass through, rather than just a driveway that belongs to SDOC.
And they're using the comp plan to drive that mandate.
Yeah, and the issue that I have with our two things is their community already has an east lying, I'm an east,
Top is
always
up
gonna be
is north, yes.
Okay. So on the east side, that definitely is a road on that side, right?
Yes.
Pine Grove is further to the,
Right.
to the
And
east.
then on the north side, when you come off of Nova, there's gonna be a new road coming in to the north, so they basically have 2 points of ingress and egress.
Correct.
Now, the issue that I'm having, which I don't mind working together with the other counties, the only issue is that is a transportation depot. And so the roads, to me, it's not a traditional road. You got all these buses coming in and out. And you're gonna have an issue with liability where people are gonna try to cut through there to get into their neighborhood when we have buses going in and out. And that's not just a school bus, that's the Transportation Depot East. You know, and so having these vehicles coming in there, and, because the whole purpose of building, one of the purposes of building Transportation East was to reduce deadhead, go in and out and be efficient. And if they're constantly going in and out, and you got people flying through there, I see car accidents hitting our buses are gonna have to slow down, people won't let them in. So, you know what I'm saying, so if people are coming through this neighborhood, just flying through, the bus is gonna have to wait 5 or 10 minutes before somebody lets them in. So I have a real issue with using that as an access point to their neighborhood. You know, and the reality is, they haven't been built yet, we're building before them, you know what I mean? So it's like, you know, so I just have a real issue with St. Cloud making us do that. Or they're basically taking advantage of our development. And the reality is, they have 2 points of access. They have a point of access on the north and a point of access on the east. And so I really don't feel comfortable with St. Cloud asking us to do that when it's specifically to be transportation.
Yes. Correct, it connects to that neighborhood.
And they would know this.
So this is an
Yep,
easement.
yep, yep.
This is the road. This is a utility easement that we already, that's in, that's how our utilities are going. But this is the road that they're
So
asking to
they would
connect
be
over.
responsible for the portion past our second curb cut.
So one of the reasons that we wanted to
So
discuss
it's,
it.
and the other thing too, is it's almost like they're entering private property. You know, that's technically, you know, we're not a private property because we're a public entity. But the point is, we're specifically using that road because we don't even want our own traffic on there too. Our own parents are driving on the north side, not on the south side. Now, where's the school buses coming in?
The school buses are gonna come off
For the
of
high
this
school,
road.
not for the, let me correct that. School buses for the
They're
specific
going to come
high
off of the
school.
same road.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the
No,
intent,
no.
is to bring the buses off of that road as
All
well.
right.
Right.
But that only happens twice a day, in the morning and at night. So when Transportation East coordinates the launching point of their buses, they're never going to be fighting with them. But they're going to be fighting with people who are trying to come in and out and using it as a side road to come in. And something happens, and, you know what I'm saying, it just,
Well, the reason, one of the main reasons that we brought it up for discussion is because when we built the budget for this, we never intended this to be a local road. We intended it to be a typical drive that you would have for our buses. So there's now going to be for the school district to undertake something like this, there is going to be a significant impact to our budget for additional design services, permitting, and the construction. We know the design fee, which we did ask for a rough cost, is roughly about 70,000. We expect the construction cost is going to be significant as well. But that's why we wanted to bring it up to the board.
was the city willing to pay anything?
Yeah,
Because if they're
and-
trying to say, hey, we're going to make you.
And part of those discussions have included cost sharing, so that, you know, we envision that cost sharing agreement would look like they would pay for having to go from the access road that we were going to build to the road built to municipal standards with the sidewalks, the thicker pavement, the wider width, the street lighting, et cetera.
And I did ask Jason and Rhonda to stop in because we've been trying to have meetings with the city. We brought the city, the county, and the developer that is building this neighborhood to the other side to sort of talk through, well, what's your timeline? Who's going to cover the costs and stuff like that? We really don't have any agreements in place.
We're working on agreements right now. What we have talked about with the developer is that, yes, we would design the entire roadway. They would come back, potentially, we have to work out the agreement, and they would construct the phase past our second entrance
Past that
at their
second curb
cost to tie into their development. Cities, at this point, has not put any money in towards this, because it's development and us building it, as far as the depot and the school goes. But we do have an agreement in the works with the developer to help pay for the roadway.
Jason,
Yes,
developer pays for part of the design fee.
that hasn't been finally
Well,
negotiated.
if we're designing the road that's going to accommodate them.
We're designing the road, and their point was that in case the road that you're talking about to the north, the Bluebird Parkway is what it's called, that's county roadway. We don't know when that's going to come through, so we may need the southern road to get into our high school at some point. So they want us to design
They
it so
still
we
need
can.
our road. They still need it, so you need to put on the table, they need to participate in the design fee.
Okay.
And the other thing too is that there's gonna be a traffic light there, correct? Now that
Yes.
they're using us, because I'm pretty sure that traffic light, like, we done it before, I don't want to make the automatic assumption, we did it at Knightsbridge, where we
We
cautioned.
have a traffic signal included in our transportation
It's
project,
in the
Mr.
project
Melendez,
today for the
because
signal.
our buses need to make a left
No,
turn.
I understand, no, I'm talking about for financial component, as far as like, who
Oh, I
will
see.
pay for that traffic light? You know what I'm saying? Because this development across the street is going to be benefiting as well. And now, if we're including this as a light, they're going to be able to turn left. So to a certain degree, I don't know what a fair apportionment of fees are, but if they're benefiting, it's not just a traffic design, it's also contributing to the pot of that traffic light.
I agree. Now that this is becoming a local road requirement, initially it was going to be our access road, exclusive to us, and we were going to have sole use of that signal. We were going to turn ownership of it to the county, a time of use signal. But yes, I agree that now that this is becoming a local road, will be used by others, that should be part of the cost sharing.
Kind of Rhonda worked on that.
Yeah, I need to step back just a little bit on a couple of things. Frank, in answer to your question, so when America Home for Rents came through, they met all their obligations and requirements for the city of St. Cloud, and they actually stepped up and volunteered, if necessary, to build the balance of the road past our break point, and they're working that out directly with the city of St. Cloud for mobility credits. So they're actually not required to get involved in this road at all. So where the design cost comes in is the city's putting that back on us because they see us as a developer. And to move our project forward, they're requiring the road,
Then just design the portion we need.
because otherwise America Homes for Rents could back out. They're not required to
But
get
they're not.
involved in this road at all, so
And at current.
I worry about them being asked to contribute toward the design costs when they're not even required to
Well, if
get
you don't
involved.
ask, you
But
don't
at
know.
current,
One,
that is what is
City of
included
St.
in the
Cloud is
design
requiring
scope.
City does
It's
it.
just
So
our
then-
access
Okay.
road.
There, I mean,
I think it's with the city to become part of the proportionate share
That's our
agreement.
difficulty here, Mr. Arguello,
Yeah,
is
they're
trying to
treating us
get
like
them
a
to come to the
developer.
table. They're looking at it, we need this road, but we really don't know who's going to pay for it. And that's the difficulty I have, because we need to open this facility in 2024. And by that, I mean, I'm knee-deep in design at this moment and really going to start construction. Is how much do I construct and how much do my budget can accommodate? And that's the difficulty really we have.
My direction to staff thus far is let's build the piece we need to open our transportation facility.
And to Mr. Clinch's point is, a part of what I have to do is submit to the city of St. Cloud and to Osceola County my drawings and say, hey, can you approve this so I can build it? And then that becomes the hold-up point where they don't approve our drawings.
So the American Homes for Rent said if the city will offer us mobility fee credits, we'll build the road, but just
It's like
because
the
they
same
can
thing,
do.
the city's paying for it regardless.
Right, but they're not having to
But
put
they're not
cash
having to
out.
put cash out
So it's
for it.
about not putting cash
Okay,
on the
good.
table.
And
And so then on the second piece for the red light, I absolutely agree that all parties should be involved, but at the time of the traffic impact analysis, based on traffic, even with all of this development coming, it did not trigger a signal. But our transportation department asked that we not move forward without putting the red light in to assist them coming in and out. So all of these adjacent developers know the light wasn't triggered due to their development. So while we can ask them to do proportionate share, they'll fall back on the traffic signal light and say, but you're just putting it in because you have a need for the light. We didn't trigger the need for the light. So I do expect some
Then here's another-
pushback on
Our
that.
signal is an operational requirement. Thus,
Yes.
it was going to be a time of use. Now it's going to be a full use
At our
signal.
request.
And here's another thing too then, where is that community? And I don't know what the authority of the school district is, then they need to work with this as well. What's going to be considered the main entrance to that community? Because I'm looking at traffic, people are probably driving St.
Down
Cloud.
here is their main
yeah,
entrance.
Pine Grove Reserve's main entrance is down here.
It's down here.
That's the
The
main-
divided roadway with the signage and.
Yes, but how did they coming in there then? So is that, so on the bottom here, this is 192.
Well, if I was coming off
Does-
Nova, I would go through that shortcut.
Right.
I would definitely go
It
through.
will-
Yes,
the
you know what I'm trying to say, so I wanted to make sure that they're kind of directing traffic on their side, because if the main entrance is going to be using this as a main entrance way to come in through there, then they're creating additional traffic unnecessarily. So I want them to be able to, man, because I don't know, I guess if you're coming, well, let's say like in real life, there are no jobs in Osceola County. They're all in Orange County, so they're all going to be traveling, no, because Narcousie is coming down, right? There's no cross street. Where's Stonebridge? How can they cut through? I'm talking about, imagine you're driving, I hate to say, I just think like a car, you're coming from Lake Nona, because that's where you gotta work, because you live here, but you work there, and you're coming down. So are you coming down, hitting Narcousie and turning left on 192 to go up? Or is there a cross street to come down, and you're coming on this north side?
Once Center Lake is cut through and Bluebird Parkway, that'll be the full connection to Narcousie. But until then, it's Narcousie to 192 and back to Nova,
Okay.
Pine Grove, et cetera.
And that's where that Dollar Tree and that gas station is, right?
Yeah, that'll
So
be
once
the
they hit
cut
that,
through.
they're gonna cut across
When they cut
there.
through, yes.
And that stops in
Well, it'll
above
be,
this,
cen-
right?
it's like 12 Oaks to Center Lake to
The
Bluebird Parkway.
Is gonna come through here, and then that road comes through.
Okay, so, okay, I'm just trying to think of long, because it's not just think now, think later.
Right.
That makes more sense, because that'll be the more natural progression, so people won't be passing this one to get to
Doing-
this one.
Right.
That's my point, is they come in through there, and then they can come in through the north side and minimize, unless they just want to hurry up and go to St. Cloud real quick if they want, but not for work. So, but either way, I was trying to avoid this altogether, but if that's going to be the case, I just want to make sure that they're diverting traffic somewhere else, and we're not paying for it 100%.
So our transportation needs design continues to move forward. This is an issue that we wanted to bring to your attention today. We will continue our discussions with the municipalities and work with legal to come to a reasonable shared, proportionate share agreement.
Yeah, I just don't, here's the thing, in the end, very rarely is the school entity in the bad bargaining position. Like, they could hold up your permit, but then there's gonna be 5 elected people who are holding up the permit for a school next to a development that they approved. So it's not the smartest way to go about it, I would imagine. I mean, I think that people are gonna be really hard pressed to hold up a permit for a school where they desperately need one. But they could try,
Agreed.
that'll last about
It's
2
just-
years.
It's been going on for like a little bit now, and it's just not being able to come to, well, what is it that you really want, and truly want? I mean, our engineer, I even paid him to show a city road going through here. They did it, they gave it, we just need to move forward, so we can show this road representatively and really design everything else until you tell us what you want. But in order for me to get the design done, we need to really give them clear direction, and that's what we're attempting to do. And that is actually all that we have.
Thank you for your input. Mostly appreciated.
Thank you.
Kudos to
So
the
we're definitely
architects.
doing The water retention, not behind the ball fields, right? We try to find out.
We can move it. We can
Yeah,
move that.
we'll look at that. Yeah. Thank you for the comment.
We can move that.
Yeah, because when you look at the other, look at the